My name is Sienna Vale, and this is the story of how I turned the word ungrateful into the foundation of my empire. Growing up in the Vale household was like living inside a glass display case. Everything had to be perfect. Everything had to shine. My mother polished the silverware every Sunday, even though we barely used it. My father pressed his suits with military precision. Our home was not a place where people laughed too loud or cried too hard. It was a place where emotions were controlled, where dreams were practical, where love was conditional. And I learned early on that questioning anything meant you were not grateful enough. I was 8 years old when I first heard that word thrown at me like a weapon. Ungrateful. I had asked my mother why I could not take art classes instead of piano. She stared at me as though I had just insulted her entire existence. "You are ungrateful, Sienna," she said coldly. "Do you know how many children would kill for the opportunities you have?" I did not understand it then, but I would spend the next decade hearing that word over and over again until it became part of my identity. Ungrateful. When I asked why I could not choose my own friends. Ungrateful. When I questioned why I had to attend their church every Sunday even though I did not believe. Ungrateful. When I told them I wanted to be an architect instead of joining my father's accounting firm. That was the final straw. I was 17 when I made the announcement at dinner. My father had just finished talking about how I would start interning at his firm the following summer. He had it all planned out. I would shadow him for 2 years, then attend business school, then take over his clients. My entire life mapped out like a spreadsheet. I put down my fork and said the words that would change everything. I do not want to be an accountant. I want to study architecture. The silence that followed was suffocating. My mother laughed first. Not a joyful laugh. A mocking one. "Architecture," she repeated, as though I had just said I wanted to join the circus. "Sienna, you are not creative. You are stubborn. There is a difference." My father did not even look at me. He just shook his head and said, "We will discuss this later." But we never did. Because later meant never in the Vale household. Instead, they began to tighten their control. They monitored my phone. They chose my classes. They told me which colleges I could apply to and which career paths were acceptable. I felt like I was drowning. And the worst part was that everyone around me thought I was lucky. Lucky to have parents who cared. Lucky to have a secure future handed to me. Lucky to have a roof over my head and food on the table. But nobody asked me if I was happy. Nobody asked me if I felt seen. Nobody asked me if I wanted the life they were forcing me to live. So I made a decision. On the night of my 18th birthday, I packed a suitcase. I took my sketchbook, my laptop, $200 I had saved from babysitting, and a heart full of fear and hope. I left a note on my bed. It said, "Thank you for everything, but I need to find out who I am without you telling me." I walked out the front door at 3 in the morning. My father did not say goodbye because he was asleep. My mother did not chase after me because she thought I would come back by morning. But I did not come back. Not the next day. Not the next week. Not ever. The first month was the hardest. I stayed on my friend Lacey's couch in her tiny studio apartment. She worked at a coffee shop and let me crash there as long as I helped with rent. I found a job at a diner working night shifts. I served greasy eggs and burnt toast to truck drivers and insomniacs while studying for my community college entrance exams during my breaks. I was exhausted. I was broke. But I was free. And that freedom tasted better than anything I had ever known. I enrolled in community college and took every architecture and design class they offered. My professors saw something in me that my parents never did. They saw passion. They saw hunger. They saw someone who was willing to sacrifice everything for a dream. One of my professors, Mr. Callahan, pulled me aside after class one day and said, "Sienna, you have talent. Real talent. You should apply to transfer to a top university." I laughed bitterly. "I can barely afford community college," I said. "How am I supposed to afford a top university?" He handed me a folder filled with scholarship applications. "You find a way," he said simply. "Because people like you do not come around often. And the world needs what you have to offer." I cried in my car that night. Not because I was sad, but because someone finally believed in me. I applied to 12 universities. I got rejected by 10, but I got accepted by 2. One of them offered me a full scholarship. I packed my bags again and moved across the state to attend university. I lived in a dorm room the size of a closet. I survived on instant noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, and black coffee. I worked part-time at the campus library and spent every free moment in the architecture studio. While my parents attended charity galas and country club dinners, I was learning how to draft blueprints and calculate load-bearing walls. While they vacationed in Europe, I was pulling all-nighters to finish my design projects. While they lived in comfort, I was building my future brick by brick. And I loved every second of it, because it was mine. Nobody handed it to me. Nobody controlled it. Nobody could take it away. I graduated top of my class. I was offered internships at some of the most prestigious architecture firms in the country, but I turned them all down, because I did not want to work for someone else. I wanted to build something of my own, so I started my own firm, Sienna Vale Designs. It was just me at first, working out of a tiny rented office space that smelled like mildew and broken dreams. I took on small projects, home renovations, garage conversions, backyard studios. I poured everything I had into every single project, and slowly people started to notice. A local magazine wrote an article about my sustainable design approach. A client recommended me to their wealthy friend. That friend recommended me to someone else. And before I knew it, I was designing luxury homes for people who had more money than I had ever seen in my life. My firm grew. I hired a team. We moved into a beautiful office downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick walls. My name started appearing in design magazines. Investors reached out. Clients flew in from other states just to meet with me. I was living the dream I had sketched in my notebooks all those years ago. But there was one thing missing: closure. I had not spoken to my parents in over 10 years. I did not know if they were proud of me. I did not know if they regretted how they treated me. I did not know if they even thought about me at all. And honestly, I told myself I did not care. But deep down I did. Because no matter how successful I became, there was still a little girl inside me who wanted her parents to say, "We were wrong. You were right. We are proud of you." But life has a funny way of giving you what you need instead of what you want. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. I did not recognize the number, but something told me to answer. "Hello. Sienna." My mother's voice. I had not heard it in a decade, but I recognized it immediately. My heart stopped. "Mom." There was a long pause. "Yes. It is me." I did not know what to say. Neither did she. Finally, she spoke again. "I am calling because we need your help." Not, "How are you?" Not, "I miss you." Not, "I am sorry." Just, "We need your help." I should have hung up. But curiosity got the better of me. "What kind of help?" I asked carefully. She sighed. "Your father and I have run into some financial trouble. Our advisor disappeared with most of our retirement savings. We are trying to sell the house, but it needs work. Major work. We were wondering if you knew a good architect who could help us renovate it before we list it." I almost laughed. After all these years, after everything they said to me, after calling me ungrateful and stubborn and foolish, they were calling me for help, and they did not even know it. "I might know someone," I said slowly. "Oh, thank God," my mother said, relief flooding her voice. "Can you give me their number?" "Actually," I said, a smile creeping across my face, "I will come by myself and take a look. I will bring the architect with me." "That would be wonderful. Thank you, Sienna." I hung up, and for the first time in years I felt something I had not felt in a long time: power. I scheduled the meeting for the following week. I told my team I would be handling this project personally. They asked if it was a high-profile client. I smiled and said, "You could say that." The day of the meeting, I dressed carefully. I wore a white suit tailored to perfection. I carried a leather portfolio embossed with Sienna Vale Designs in gold lettering. I drove up to the house I grew up in, and for a moment I just sat in my car and stared. It looked smaller than I remembered. The paint was peeling. The garden was overgrown. The fountain in the front yard was cracked and dry. This was the house that was supposed to represent success. This was the house my parents were so proud of. And now it was falling apart. Just like their illusions. I walked up to the front door and rang the bell. My mother opened it. She looked older. Tired. Her hair was streaked with gray, and the lines around her eyes were deeper than I remembered. For a moment she just stared at me. Then she blinked. Once. Twice. As though I were a ghost. Sienna. Hello, Mom. She looked past me, scanning the driveway. Where is the architect? I smiled. You are looking at her. Her face went pale. My father appeared behind her. He looked even worse than my mother. His shoulders were slumped. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were hollow. Sienna, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Hi, Dad. He opened his mouth to say something, but no words came out. I stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. The house smelled the same. Lavender and lemon polish. But everything looked worn. The furniture was faded. The walls were scuffed. The chandelier that used to sparkle now hung dull and dusty. I pulled out my tablet and began taking notes. So, I said, my voice professional and detached. Let us start with the foundation. When was the last time you had it inspected? My father stammered. I do not know. I nodded. That is the problem. Foundation issues can cost tens of thousands to fix. We will need to bring in an engineer. I walked through every room. I pointed out the water damage in the master bathroom, the outdated electrical system, the sagging roof, the cracked tiles, the mold in the basement. With every issue I listed, my parents' faces grew more and more pale. Finally, we returned to the living room. I sat down on the couch and opened my portfolio. Here is what I recommend, I said. Full renovation, structural repairs, updated systems, modern design elements. It will take about 6 months and cost approximately $200,000. My mother gasped. 200,000? That is a conservative estimate, I said calmly. Depending on what we find during demolition, it could be more. My father sank into a chair. We do not have that kind of money, he said quietly. I tilted my head. Then you have 2 options. You can sell it as is for a fraction of what it is worth. Or you can find an investor willing to buy it, renovate it, and flip it. My mother looked at me desperately. Do you know anyone who would be interested? I paused. Then I smiled. Actually, I do. Who? My father asked. Me. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother stared at me. You. Yes. I will buy the house from you. I will pay you a fair price based on its current condition. Then I will renovate it and turn it into the flagship property for my firm. My father's eyes filled with something I could not quite read. Regret, maybe. Or shame. Why would you do that? He asked. I stood up and looked him directly in the eye. Because you were right about one thing, Dad. I am stubborn. And when people tell me I cannot do something, I make it my mission to prove them wrong. I handed him a contract. Think it over. You have 48 hours to decide. I walked toward the door. My mother called after me. Sienna, wait. I turned. Her eyes were wet. How did you do all this? She asked. How did you build a life for yourself when you left with nothing? I smiled sadly. You taught me that gratitude meant silence. That questioning you made me ungrateful. But I learned something you never did. Gratitude is not about being quiet. It is about being brave enough to say thank you to yourself for surviving the people who tried to break you. I left, and I did not look back. 2 days later, I received the signed contract. My parents sold me the house for half of what they originally paid for it. I brought in my team. We gutted the entire property. We tore down walls. We replaced the roof. We installed solar panels and energy-efficient windows. We redesigned the kitchen with marble countertops and custom cabinetry. We transformed the master suite into a spa-like retreat. We turned the basement into a home office with built-in shelves and soft lighting. We landscaped the yard with native plants and a sustainable irrigation system. Took 6 months, but when it was finished, it was breathtaking. It was featured in Architectural Digest. It won awards. It became the crown jewel of my portfolio. And on the front gate, I installed a brass plaque that read, Vale House, designed by the daughter who was not grateful enough. My parents drove by one day. I know because my mother called me. She was crying. Why did you do this? She sobbed. Why did you have to humiliate us? I took a deep breath. I did not do this to humiliate you, Mom. I did this to remind myself that I survived you, that I built something beautiful out of the pain you caused. That plaque is not for you. It is for me. It is my reminder that I was always enough, even when you told me I was not." She hung up. I never heard from them again. And honestly, I was okay with that. Because I had finally let go of the little girl who wanted their approval. I had finally become the woman who did not need it. Years passed. My firm continued to grow. I expanded to multiple cities. I hired dozens of employees. I mentored young architects who came from backgrounds like mine. I gave scholarships to students who could not afford school. I built a life that was not just successful, it was meaningful. And every time I drove past Vale House, I smiled. Because that house was not just a building. It was a monument to my resilience. A testament to my courage. A reminder that the people who tried to bury me did not know I was a seed. One day, I received a letter in the mail. It was from my father. I almost threw it away. But something told me to open it. Inside was a single handwritten page. "Dear Sienna, I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not expect you to respond to this letter. But I need you to know something. You were right. I was wrong. I spent so many years trying to control your life because I was afraid. Afraid that you would fail. Afraid that you would get hurt. Afraid that you would realize you did not need me. But the truth is, you never needed me. You were always strong enough on your own. And I am sorry that I could not see that until it was too late. I am proud of you, Sienna. I always have been. I just did not know how to say it. Love, Dad." I read the letter 3 times. And then I cried. Not because I was sad, but because I finally got the closure I did not know I needed. I did not write back. But I kept the letter. Because forgiveness is not about forgetting. It is about releasing the hold that pain has on your heart. And I was finally ready to let go. Today I am 42 years old. I have a thriving business, a beautiful home, a life I designed myself. And when people ask me how I did it, I tell them the truth. I was called ungrateful. I was called stubborn. I was called foolish. But I turned those words into fuel. I turned rejection into resilience. I turned pain into power. And I built a life that no one thought I could afford. Not with money, but with courage. Because the most expensive things in life are not bought with currency. They are bought with sacrifice, with tears, with sleepless nights, with the decision to keep going even when everyone tells you to give up. And that is something no one can ever take away from me. So to anyone reading this who has ever been called ungrateful, to anyone who has ever been told they are not enough, to anyone who has ever been made to feel small, let me tell you something. You are not ungrateful. You are brave. You are not stubborn. You are determined. You are not foolish. You are fearless. And one day, you will build something so beautiful that the people who tried to break you will drive by and wonder how you did it. And you will smile. Because you will know the truth. You did it by refusing to stay small. You did it by believing in yourself when no one else would. You did it by turning their cruelest words into your greatest weapon. And that is the most powerful revenge of all. Not bitterness. Not hatred. But success. Pure, undeniable, breathtaking success. Because some gifts are not wrapped in ribbons. Some are wrapped in survival. In grit. In the refusal to let anyone else write your story. And when you finally hold that gift in your hands, you realize something. You do not need their approval. You do not need their validation. You do not need them at all. Because you have something far more valuable. You have yourself. And that is more than enough. My name is Sienna Vale. And this is how I turned the word ungrateful into the foundation of my empire. This is how I proved that the daughter they underestimated would become the woman they could never forget. This is how I showed them the life they never thought I could afford. Not with their money, but with my own hands, my own heart, my own unshakable belief that I was always worthy. Even when they said I was not. Especially when they said I was not. Because that is when I decided to prove them wrong. And I did. Over and over again. Until the only voice that mattered was my own. And it said, you are enough. You have always been enough. And you always will be. If this story touched your heart, if you have ever felt underestimated or overlooked, please subscribe to our channel. We share real stories of resilience, courage, and triumph. Stories that remind you that your past does not define your future. that your pain can become your power, that you are capable of building a life beyond your wildest dreams. Hit that subscribe button and join our community of survivors who became warriors. Because your story matters, and we cannot wait to hear it.